Nearly 2,000 former Justice Department officials are publicly and formally calling on Attorney General Barr to resign, to get out of office for putting Donald Trump's personal and political interests over the rule of law. This is a group of officials from both parties. These are career lawyers who've basically served at the highest levels in Republican and Democratic administrations. All of this amidst the controversy over the Michael Flynn case. The DOJ making the unprecedented move to drop that case even after Mr. Flynn pled guilty in that case that grew out of the Mueller investigation. The letter calls for resignation, citing Barr's, quote, repeated assaults on the rule of law in doing Trump's personal bidding. Meanwhile, a former DOJ prosecutor who resigned in protest over what happened here in the Roger Stone case as well, speaking out for the very first time, writing that Barr's DOJ is now, quote, infected by politics, doing lasting damage to the institution, and calling out Bill Barr's, quote, unmistakable message to DOJ officials: if Trump demands it, we will throw you under the bus. Many also asking for the judge in charge of this Flynn case to, quote, take a long, hard look at the Trump administration's explanation in the evidence. So think about it. What you have right here is something beyond good faith disagreement about how to handle a case, which does happen. What you have here is over 1,000 people with all the requisite experience in both parties saying this is well over the line, even during the public health crisis and pandemic. And amidst all that, you also have President Obama saying this.
Our basic understanding of rule of law is at risk.
Renato Mariotti is a former federal prosecutor. He signed the letter calling on Attorney General Barr to resign. You see him there among the alumni. And eagle-eyed beat viewers will remember Renato has provided legal analysis for us back in the days of the open Mueller probe. Good to see you again, sir.
Absolutely. Glad to be back on.
Why did you sign this letter?
I'm really concerned that at this point we have a Justice Department that treats the president's friends differently than other defendants. You know, it's very common, Ari, for the FBI to actually trick people into lying to them in certain instances. Courts have said that's okay. On a regular basis, there are very aggressive law enforcement tactics that have been upheld by courts. There are literally hundreds of defendants in that situation. And who gets picked out for special treatment? Michael Flynn. And from what I see, what the Justice Department brief reads like something a defense attorney would file on behalf of a client that would be unsuccessful. And let's get into the context, because there's so much going on. Like the prosecutor you dive deep into the details of the underlying case. But big picture, again, there's a lot going on. We did cover this last week, but people are living through this public health crisis at the highest level. When you were a prosecutor, did you ever secure a high-profile guilty verdict, in this case a confession, he pled guilty, and then go back a year later and reverse it? Never heard of such a thing happening. Never.
So that's both in your career, and you never heard of it elsewhere?
Correct. In fact, in similar cases, Dennis Hastert, for example, never happened.
Yeah. So this is, just at the broadest level, before we get to the details of the case, this is something that never happens. That's only done when Mueller's off the job. That's only done under the sort of the shroud of this understandably consuming other topic that the country's going through. For fairness, let me play you what Attorney General Barr is saying about it, about defending what everyone knows factually is a very unusual move. Take a look.
People sometimes plead to things that turn out not to be crimes, and the Department of Justice is not persuaded that this was material to any legitimate counterintelligence investigation. So it was not a crime.
Your response?
It clearly was material. In fact, not only did the Justice Department argue that it was material up until recently, but of course the judge found that it was material at the time that he accepted the plea. On multiple occasions, the judge made that finding. And of course, Barr's own words, the words of the Justice Department, were quoting an official who has now come forward and said that her words have been twisted by the Justice Department.
Yeah, you're referring to Mary McCord. I thought that was a rather extraordinary statement she issued in an article I believe was published in the Times. That's also something you don't usually see. I mean, any one of these things would be a huge deal. And frankly, if you want to look at the level of attention in Washington and elsewhere, would be gobbling up way more attention if this were in the middle of the Mueller probe, right? There's a lot of other fish to fry. What do you think is the solution here? And what do you think when Bill Barr says, well, history is written by the victors, and he basically seems to be taking a bow about sort of the realpolitik, his view of the role he plays?
Well, there's going to need to be some very difficult questioning by the judge, but separate and apart from that, we need congressional oversight, regardless of whether or not Barr agrees to cooperate. I know Trump only wants oversight by Republicans, but the House needs to conduct oversight now. And if and when there's a change in this upcoming election, the new administration needs to overhaul and have some reform at the Justice Department, because it surely is needed at this point.
Renato Mariotti, thank you, and good to see you as mentioned. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.